Hello and a warm welcome to another edition of To The Point. On the show this week, Union Secretary for Drinking Water and Sanitation, Parmeswaran Iyer. Welcome, sir, on To The Point.
Thanks.
Let me begin by asking you that you've been looking after a number of sanitation programs across many countries when you were in the World Bank. My first question to you would be that is India on the right curve?
I think there's no doubt about that. I think India is on the right curve. As you said, I've worked in many countries. And in particular on sanitation, I think the Prime Minister has put us on an unstoppable trajectory. With the announcement of the Swachh Bharat mission, this is the first time ever that the Prime Minister of India has made sanitation one of his top priorities. That itself has been a game-changing difference in sanitation in India. If you look at other countries, not really comparable in terms of scale. I mean, they're much smaller. But even smaller countries require their chief executives to put a particular program on the agenda. And what our Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister Modi did when he launched the Swachh Bharat mission in October 2014 was to put it squarely on the national agenda. It's about behavior change. As he keeps saying, it's about a Jan Andolan. If you heard him yesterday at the 3rd anniversary of Swachh Bharat Divas, it's all about the people and how people have made this their own program. And it's not about a government program anymore.
But of course, as you rightly pointed out, the Prime Minister is the motivator in chief. He's spoken about Swachh Bharat in a number of addresses, in also Mann Ki Baat. But despite all the positivity behind the campaign, there is also some kind of a cynicism which exists about the program. What do you think is the reason for that?
Well, I think that there are some sections of society who sometimes tend to look at the glass as being half empty. This is a huge program. It's an unprecedented program. It's the largest behavior change program in the world. And there will be some aberrations here and there, as the Honorable Prime Minister mentioned himself. I think the media has played, on the whole, a very positive role. But if you look at the ground level, there's huge mobilization taking place across India. And some of it has not really been noticed. It's easier to notice, particularly in urban areas.
But when you say it's not noticed, you're talking about maybe the rural areas or where the grassroots people are actually working?
Yeah, exactly. I'm talking about real people doing real work. And as the Prime Minister has often recognized, this is about ordinary people who have adopted this program and they're doing extraordinary things on sanitation. Mm-hmm. Recently the Swachhata Hi Seva fortnight in the run-up to the 3rd anniversary, which ran from 15th September to 2nd October, there was huge mobilization across the board with Shramdan, not just people talking. And then we had school kids. These are the ambassadors of Swachh Bharat, as the Honorable Prime Minister mentioned yesterday. Mm-hmm. Almost 3 crore paintings by primary school children on the theme of Swachhata. 2.6 crore essays saying how they are contributing and how they will contribute to a Swachh Bharat. And mobilization across NCC. But most of all, if you look at rural India, it's about ordinary communities who have understood the importance of making their villages open defecation free from a health point of view, from a security and dignity of women point of view, and from an economic point of view.
But of course, community participation has been seen extensively at all levels. But if you talk about, say, the eras of 80s, when you had other programs like Nirmal Bharat Abhiyan, and then when you compare it with the Swachh Bharat, what is the qualitative difference which you can actually point out between maybe the programs like these?
I think there are 3 or 4 major differences. The biggest difference is this is the first time the Prime Minister has made it his flagship program. That has given a huge fillip to political commitment and support for the program. One major difference. The focus on behavior change. This is not about building toilets or constructing toilets. It's about the usage of toilets and how do you trigger behavior change, a major focus. The third is the sustaining of open defecation free. In earlier programs, the emphasis more on achieving nirmalta, if you like, and then not really focusing on how will that be sustained. There's huge focus in this program, not just on verification of ODF, but how do you sustain it? What are the mechanisms which will sustain ODF? How, in some cases, financial incentives are being given to villages and gram panchayats to remain ODF. And I think the concept itself of open defecation free, this is the first time that's come on the agenda. It's a big policy shift because it signifies the acceptance and willingness of the community in making their entire unit open defecation free and not just individual households having toilets. So many reasons. In addition, the focus on solid and liquid waste management was not there before. So it's not just about an ODF village, it's about an ODF plus village.
But you just pointed out that it's more got to do with a behavioral change which you're trying to trigger in the society. But is it not also about access and the supply of water? It's somewhere connected. The two are connected.
Water and sanitation go very closely together, as you pointed out. And this is being dealt with at least two levels. At the policy level, there is a policy decision that all villages which become open defecation free will get piped water on priority. So there's an incentive for them to become open defecation free. And vice versa, all the villages which have public standposts already, they are converging into open defecation free status. At an implementation or technical level, it's important to recognize that the rural pan, the toilet pan, is a steep slope pan, which is a steep slope. It requires less water to flush. In fact, we showed that to the Honorable Prime Minister at the exhibition yesterday. It requires only about 1.5 liters to flush, as opposed to the urban toilet, which requires 4 to 5 liters. Okay. So that's another way to deal with water or the lack of water. And finally, although pipe water supply is desirable, it's not essential. It's not such a big problem to get a balti of water from a hand pump and use it to flush your toilet.
But when you talk about this behavioral change in rural pockets especially, caste is also a very big factor. And when you talk about things like twin pits and all these things, caste is the dominant factor in many rural pockets. How do you overcome that challenge?
Look, we are quite confident that this is a community movement. And you spoke about caste, and there is this perception about caste. What we have found in practice is that communities, entire segments of the community, when they accept the responsibility of making their village open defecation free, then I think caste barriers are broken down. So for example, when triggering takes place, triggering is the process of initiating behavior change in the village by trained motivators. They get all sections together, they look at all sections, all habitations in that particular village, and it overcomes. And in fact, we've also found that promoting the twin pit technology is actually the safest technology. In fact, some of us demonstrated it ourselves of getting into a pit. It's very simple. When one pit fills up, you divert the excreta to the second pit. Mm-hmm. And the first pit, which is closed, you wait for about a year. It completely dries up. It becomes perfectly usable compost. So there's wealth in waste, and anyone can pick it up. So we're encouraging that, and we need to promote the twin pit technology more. In fact, at yesterday's exhibition in Vigyan Bhavan, we had a very nice little electronic model, a little game of how do you build a twin pit, where you had to drag the first step onwards, and actually the Prime Minister did it very well himself.
But I'm interested to know that when in rural pockets where the caste factor is quite dominant, and with the technological interventions you are talking about, can these technological interventions actually overcome the kind of social beliefs which the people have in the rural areas?
I'm telling you, it's happening. I mean, if you go, we're very happy for you to go and visit rural areas. You will see, look, there may be some problems in some areas, but on the whole, there's no doubt that the community approach will overcome caste barriers, and it's happening. We have got 250,000 plus villages which have become open defecation free. This is the entire village. And therefore, we are quite confident that the community approach brings all sections together.
Let's now take up a few challenges about which we've read reports. Now, for example, one of the goals of the Swachh Bharat mission is to eradicate manual scavenging. My first question to you is that, do we really have some kind of a data which shows that how many manual scavengers are there in the country? Because in many parts, we still read reports of how manual scavenging is prevalent, despite the fact that the government is trying hard to remove it.
Yeah, first of all, it'll be good to understand how this is being approached at a government level.
Okay.
So the key ministry responsible for overlooking the Manual Scavenging Act is the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. Okay. So they're enforcing the act. Now, most manual scavenging, whenever it takes place, we read newspaper reports, is handled by the Ministry of Urban Development, because it's primarily an urban problem. The whole issue of sewerage and sewers is an urban problem. In rural areas where we come in, the issue is not so much of manual scavenging, but of conversion of insanitary toilets to sanitary toilets, for which the survey is almost 100% complete, and they have been almost fully completed in terms of conversion. Now, there may be isolated cases here and there in rural India, but for the most part, the conversion of insanitary to sanitary has been completed.
Okay. But now we've traveled far and wide in states like Rajasthan. In fact, one of the villages, I think in Bikaner, which was declared open defecation free for the first time. But there were also reports in a number of gram panchayats where there was not even a single toilet. But the matter was hushed up just to secure an ODF tag. How far is that true? Have you come across villages like these?
Look, as you said, there might be a couple of isolated incidents. For the most part, the verification process is very robust.
Okay.
So it goes all the way from the Gram Panchayat to the district to the state, and at the national level, we do independent third-party surveys to make sure that everything is okay. So as you said, an isolated case here or there, when it comes to our notice, we immediately get the state to act. But as I said, we had recently the Quality Council of India, an independent agency, did a large third-party survey. They surveyed 140,000 households, and they found that the usage of toilets was above 90%. So we are fairly confident the process is robust, and the verification process is robust, and the sustaining of ODF is also robust. Individual cases, of course, may happen, and they're dealt with on a case-by-case basis.
I would like to also understand from you that when you declare a village ODF, what is the process which actually the government follows?
Sure.
What is the procedure to declare a village ODF?
So there is a protocol which we issue from the Government of India, some guidelines, but it's quite flexible because at the end of the day, water and sanitation are state subjects. So it's their responsibility and accountability. But typically the process is as follows. So when a village becomes open defecation free, they have an Aam Sabha, an open meeting where everyone agrees for transparency that the village is open defecation free. Then an outside agency from the village will verify. It comes from outside the village. It can come from the Gram Panchayat headquarters or it can come from the district headquarters. Then sometimes the state government will employ their own third-party verification. So it is self-declared by the district, the state verifies, and at the national level we send out on a sample basis national level monitors. We also do third-party surveys. The process is quite rigorous and robust, and we are confident that for the most part it's well done.
And what is the duration of this verification process? Like, is it for a year or maybe every 6 months?
So basically what happens is that once a village is self-declared as ODF, within a 90-day window, the verification has to take place.
That's the first verification.
That's the first verification. And then 6 months later is the second verification. And what we do nationally on an annual basis is a third-party survey through an independent verification agency on a sample basis to make sure that the coverage numbers are robust.
But what happens, like we keep hearing that 12,000 is an amount which the government keeps giving to the people who are building toilets. But I have myself spoken to a number of Gram Pradhans who said that this amount is not enough. So do we really see it as some kind of an incentive, or does the government really need to think about enhancing this amount?
Actually, you use the right word. It's an incentive. This is not necessarily the cost of the toilet. What we have found is that 12,000 rupees is quite adequate in most parts of India, in normal situations, to build a reasonable twin-pit toilet, which is the toilet we promote for the most part. Now, it's not necessarily the cost, it's not a subsidy, it's an incentive. There are many situations, you might have read about when Honorable Prime Minister mentioned in Man Ki Baat, a village in Bijnor called, I think it was called Akbarpur, they surrendered the incentive. So it's not necessary that people who are even eligible actually take it. Because at the end of the day, what is important is they understand the importance of having a toilet in their home to use it and the village. So it's not about a sarkari toilet being foisted upon them. So the 12,000 is only an incentive and is more than adequate. In many cases, people spend their own money if they want to put in a bathing facility, or it can cost less as well. So there's a lot of flexibility. But I would like to re-emphasize that it's not the cost of the toilet, and if anyone wants to add anything more, they're most welcome.
I was traveling to a few villages in Haryana where, in fact, not only Haryana, a number of other states, where in villages you find toilets being used as storehouses. They'll store cow dung cakes, they'll store sacks of grains inside the toilet. So how do you change this kind of a phenomena, really?
Again, it all boils down to behavior change. In fact, even yesterday, the Honorable Prime Minister recounted a story in Gujarat at the time of the Morvi Dam burst, where he was surprised to find that goats were in the toilets which he had organized. So there will be isolated cases, but I think the vast behavior change movement, which is literally sweeping across, particularly in rural areas, I think will ensure that the toilets are used for the purpose they are built.
You really, when you joined as secretary for this department, there were whole lots of news stories saying that you are the man who's going to actually pull this campaign forward. Now that just 2 years are left, because 2019 or 2022 is the deadline, how hopeful are you really of fulfilling this?
Look, I'm very confident. I'm very grateful to the government and the Honorable Prime Minister for giving me this opportunity to make whatever little contribution I can. I think we are on a sort of a good trajectory now.
Okay.
If you look at the numbers, it's not a numbers game, but if you look at the progress made over the last 15 to 18 months, it's been quite significant. We are very confident that the Swachhata Hi Seva fortnight has actually given a big boost to the whole program. It ended yesterday, but I think it's generated so much momentum. It's going to push us a long way forward. I'm very confident that we will reach the goal which the Honorable Prime Minister set us.
But when you are on your field visits, obviously you come across villages which have been declared ODF. But have you also come across instances where a village has been declared ODF and then apparently it has slipped back to its original position? How do you take it forward from there?
Sure. The word slip back was associated with an earlier sanitation program, and there have been cases on that. As I mentioned, one of the major differences between the Swachh Bharat mission and earlier programs is the focus on sustaining ODF. We put a lot of emphasis on that. A couple of months ago, we had a workshop where we had people from 100 districts, young collectors and CDOs, who of ODF districts, who exchange experiences on how they sustained it. So sustaining ODF is very important. As I said, there may be an isolate case here and there, which has, as you said, slipped back. But as long as the focus on sustainability is there, it can very quickly come back to ODF status. And that's what we keep encouraging states and working with them to make sure that ODF is sustained.
I was reading a few recent targets which said that more than 60% of the sanitation coverage has been done in terms of the number of toilets are concerned. What is the next target? After all the villages of India are declared ODF, what is the next target you see in mind?
Look, I mean, first of all, of course, we've got to reach that. And then I think there are a couple of things which are important. One is to sustain the ODF. It's going to be really important, as I mentioned. We are already focusing on that, and we will need to continue focusing on that. Because in many ways, it's quite a challenge to achieve ODF status. And then sometimes it's even more of a challenge to sustain it. So we need to focus on sustaining it. We also need to focus a lot on solid and liquid waste management. And not just in urban areas where it's very important, but also in rural areas. And we call this ODF plus. So while we are focusing on ODF plus already, and we have a roadmap for solid and liquid waste management, we will need to continue focusing on that as we go forward. And then, behavior change never really stops. And hygiene promotion never stops. So we will need to focus on the entire package as we go forward.
But when you talk about the solid and the liquid waste management, of course, in urban areas, you have the waste matter which is being carried from homes to the landfill sites. But in the rural areas and especially the smaller towns, this is quite a challenge because you don't have a strong network for waste management. So how do you really implement things at that level?
Sure, it's slightly different, as you said, in rural areas, because there you can have very simple, low-cost solutions and decentralized solutions. So for example, for liquid waste, for kitchen waste, what we call grey water, you can have simple soak pits in front of the kitchen. You can use the kitchen garden. You can have smaller decentralized systems. There are some very good models which look at local village-based solutions, simple waste stabilization ponds. So we need different approaches to solid and liquid waste management in rural and in urban, and we are focusing on a multitude of options.
So you were saying that people are motivated to do it because there are a lot of incentives attached to the program and the villages, of course, which are declared ODF. So what are the kind of incentives which the government really gives apart from the 12,000 amount?
Yeah, so I think the biggest incentive is the knowledge that they're doing it for themselves, to be absolutely honest. And I think that realization which the Prime Minister as our communicator-in-chief keeps emphasizing, it's beneficial to them. So yesterday, the Honorable Prime Minister spoke about a UNICEF study recently commissioned which says very clearly that a household will save 50,000 rupees a year on average if it goes in for proper sanitation. In terms of avoided health costs, time savings, there are many reasons why sanitation is actually good business. So that's the primary incentive. The government incentive of 12,000 for a toilet, I think, is a very small part of it. It's about wanting to be clean, keeping your village clean, keeping your household clean, and actually, in the end of the day, getting an economic return on it.
When you talk about the drinking water and sanitation department, there's a joke in the corridors of power which says that drinking water and sanitation, it seems this department is doing nothing except for Swachh Bharat campaign. So would you really agree with this?
Look, the Swachh Bharat, we do two important programs. The Swachh Bharat is one of them, and the other one is the National Rural Drinking Water Program, which is very much on our radar screen. And what we have done recently is to completely restructure this program.
But how much time do you really get to actually concentrate on the drinking water?
Well, there are 24 hours a day, so there's a lot of, we have a saying in our ministry that in many ways the sun never sets on our work. So we work pretty much, I wouldn't say round the clock, but we work a lot. And since water and sanitation go together, we give them all equal importance. Sanitation, of course, is the flagship program, and rural drinking water is equally important.
Let's talk about a few challenges about which I was reading as far as the drinking water is concerned. Currently, out of 176 million rural households, only about 27 million have access to piped water. Now, this is way below the halfway mark of, say, about 88 million households. So how does the government reach the target?
So if you look at piped water supply, so let's look at the overall picture for rural drinking water, which is what we are overall responsible for. So about close to 80%, I think it's about 78% of households in rural India, in habitations, which is how we measure it, have access to at least 40 liters per capita per day. This could be through piped water supply, it could be through hand pumps, right? So that's overall. If you look at piped water supply, about 54% of rural habitations in India, of the population in India, has access to piped water supply through public standpools. Now, I'm not talking of household connections. Mm-hmm. If you only look at household connections, I think it's about 16%. So there's still a long way to go in terms of providing piped water supply in households. But we must recognize that the challenges in piped water supply in some ways are quite complex, because it's not just about providing infrastructure, it's about operation and maintenance. Because you need to keep the system running, it needs to be functional. And there are many different ways, aspects of that. It's a management aspect, there's a technical aspect, there's an environmental aspect. So what we have done is, many states have taken the lead themselves. So for example, the state of Telangana, they are planning to provide a household connection in every house in rural Telangana, I think in the next year or so. Some states have got high coverage like Gujarat or Kerala or Punjab. Others have low coverage in terms of pipe water supply, particularly for household connections. So we have now decided that we are yet to get cabinet approval for this, but the idea is to put this on challenge mode to make it competitive. So our pot of money, which is not very large, we have an annual budget of about 6,000 crores. The idea is that how can we make this better used, better utilized, and focus on outcomes, functionality of systems, and sustainability. So we are planning to do this, and I think that will take it into a better space in terms of better utilization, more friendly competition among states, and lead to more sustainability in the end.
Another challenge is of the staff within the system. Now, for example, we've seen that the execution of the rural drinking water projects has been really tardy, and to quote one of your ministry's figures, till December 2016, only 44.5% funds had been used and 53.5% works have been completed. So how do you explain this inequality?
So we have taken several steps over the past several months to streamline the process and make the implementation more efficient. One of the things we did was that we actually developed a system now over the last 7 or 8 months where all the central funds have to be utilized for specific projects. Earlier, money was going to the state governments, and then they were being just measured in terms of coverage of habitations. Now, central funds are directly linked to specific projects, and they can't be used outside these. So we can't spread it too thin, with some exceptions. So now projects which are at an advanced stage of completion, let's say 75% and above completed, they will have to spend first. So the priority will be to them, then for 50% and above. So this has tightened up the implementation and made it much more efficient.
But if you look at the operational level, the piped water schemes, they also pose a lot of problems. Now, for example, you may correct if I'm wrong. I was reading a report somewhere which said that the public health engineering departments, they are tasked with this job, but they are quite short-staffed. In states like Bihar, Rajasthan, West Bengal and Uttar Pradesh, there is no staffer which is there beyond the block level. How far is that true?
Right. So most of the states implement rural water supply, as you rightly pointed out, through public health engineering departments. There are 5 or 6 states which have corporations, like the Kerala Water Authority or the UP Jal Nigam, which earlier used to be government departments but converted into corporations to make them more efficiently run. Now, many of these are short-staffed, and they need to improve their technical capacity. Technical assistance is provided, but at the end of the day, the important thing is, can water be managed at the lowest appropriate level? And now with the 14th Finance Commission transferring significant amounts of money to the Gram Panchayats, it's important that the Gram Panchayats take on the role of management at the local level. So one model is where bulk water supply will be supplied to the Panchayat. The Panchayat manages the in-Panchayat distribution system. And end of the day, I think people are willing to pay for good services. So if the service is good, the user will be willing to pay. And I think it's important that from a financial sustainability point of view, that there is some cost recovery for good services, and this is being encouraged.
Another very big concern when it comes to the quality of water, and that is how do you improve the quality of water? For example, in many pockets of Madhya Pradesh, in Andhra, you have water content which is so highly laced with contents like fluoride. So how do you improve that? Because there are a number of deaths which are happening because of this.
You have raised a very valid point, and in fact, I think about 4 or 5 months ago, we launched the National Water Quality Submission, which is focusing on arsenic and fluoride. So while a fair amount of eradication of arsenic and fluoride in water had been done, but now in a final burst in the next 3.5 years, the idea is to focus on arsenic and fluoride as the most potent water quality elements. And that arsenic is focused mainly in West Bengal and fluoride mainly in Rajasthan. So this is a program which has been launched under the existing National Rural Drinking Water Mission with the idea of focusing specifically on arsenic and fluoride.
But what about those areas where we are seeing a high level of water stress? There are a lot of pockets which do not have enough water. So how is the government trying to reach those pockets?
So again, groundwater management is very important. Although it's not directly a topic of my ministry, we want to make sure that wherever water sources are used, either from groundwater or from surface water, but particularly for groundwater, there is water conservation measures are taken, source protection measures are taken. So we like to converge with programs like Manrega, like the Department of Land Resources and Watershed Management to make sure that sources are recharged. And just to throw a number at you, India extracts more groundwater than China and America combined. So it's a major issue. The Ministry of Water Resources is addressing it. The Central Groundwater Board is addressing it, and we work closely with them.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
So that's it on this episode of To The Point. See you next time with another personality. Goodbye and thanks for watching.